This ESPN podcast is brought to you by Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com.
The B.S. Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects. The B.S. Report. The B.S. Report with Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the B.S. Report, Monday morning here in Southern California. It's been a while since we've had this guy on. As usual, he's on a crappy cell phone. Always on brand. Mr. Ric Bucher, how are you?
I'm good, and I might be on a crappy cell phone, but at least I sound good. You sound a little morose. You sound a little down.
I'm down after round one. I'm in mourning. It was such a fun round one. I feel like round two is going to suck just because round one was so good. There's no way round two can be as good as round one was.
I'm a little fearful that we may see the same. That the best, and this has happened, wouldn't be the first time that it's happened, that it's going to fall off a little bit because it was dramatic, but wasn't it a little bit like a Schwarzenegger movie where there was a lot of things blowing up and who knows which direction this could go, but in the end, you knew that Schwarzenegger wasn't going to get killed.
Right.
San Antonio, Oklahoma City, they live to play again. So really, how much changed after all of the drama?
Yeah, the game sixes were actually when the real drama was. And Oklahoma City killed the drama immediately by just blowing out Memphis. But Indiana, that game was over. They were down 5. I think Atlanta might have even had the ball. And it just looked like Indiana was self-combusting. And then Atlanta just started missing shots and doing dumb things. And David West made a couple plays. All of a sudden, Indiana saved their day. I still don't believe in them at all. Do you believe in them at all?
The Pacers?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness, no.
Yeah.
I have never seen a team with that, I don't know if I want to say talent, but a team that really lived off of its cohesion and its effort fall off this dramatically in this short a period. And the guy that he actually came through in getting it done, and this is where it's always dangerous to fall in love with talent. I look at what Paul George is capable of as a two-way player, and I absolutely love him. And yet his demeanor, which I believe started from, a lot of people want to look at the trade and bringing Evan Turner in, and that kicked the team sideways. I direct it back to Paul George saying, I want LeBron James to mentor me. What? Like, to me, that emotionally had to have kicked that team sideways as much as anything else. You want to eat this guy's lunch, and now you want him to teach you the finer points of the game and being a leader? That to me was as flooring as anything that's happened with the Pacers.
Leadership, I feel like, was a big theme around one, and it was something I was thinking about a lot. We were both at Clippers-Warriors Game 7, which was just an extraordinary basketball game and great to be at. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought, for 6 games, those teams really had trouble bringing the best out of each other, and then in Game 7 it happened, which was really cool. But the Clippers, the leadership those guys had, you had Doc, who's just as tough as anyone, as any coach. You had Chris Paul, who in the second half played one of the best halves I've ever seen him play 2 ways. You had Blake, who really seemed like he was willing to fight everybody on the planet to win that game, which I needed to see from him, and he showed it. DeAndre stepped it up. J.J. Redick was as tough as anyone, really wanted to get fouled up to. They ran a play so he'd get fouled. He was cheering after they fouled him because he knew he was going to make the free throws. And Crawford stepped up big. Like, these are 6 guys that were the backbone of that team and just wouldn't let them lose that game. And then you look at that Rockets team, and it's like, who are the guys with the giant balls on that team? Yeah. Who are the guys that were like, if we lose this game, I'm fighting everyone in the locker room after? I really, it's weird, but I really feel like that's why they lost. They didn't have that one Sam Cassell, Paul Pierce in 2008 type, just that leader who's just like, we're not losing this game. I just can't accept that we're going to lose this. They didn't have it. What's interesting is the Warriors, I do feel like Steph Curry kind of got there a little bit. I felt like he was going to do anything possible to win that game, but they were still a couple guys short. Anyway, leadership, back to your Indiana point. West was the only guy I saw on that whole team who really took it personally what was going on. Do you agree with that?
No, I certainly did. David West is the one guy who carries that. And on the flip side, you had Lance Stevenson, who I think cared, but he cared in that he made it a street fight before it was a street fight. He was ready to. I felt like he wanted to throw down first and play basketball later.
Yeah.
And it was just, if somebody was going to look at him wrong, okay, let's go at it. And you don't want that either. You want somebody who's not going to back down, but certainly with the way the game is being officiated, you don't want somebody who's going to be initiating all that, because the refs in the league are simply not going to look kindly upon that. I'm glad that you mentioned the Rockets, though, because I've been dying to ask you about this.
Yeah.
I'm watching down the stretch. We all know you made much of Dork Elvis, Daryl Morey, and the Dorkapalooza, the MIT Sloan Conference. And by the way, Daryl apparently thinks I don't like him. I've heard through various channels he thinks I don't like him. Could you straighten that out? Could you? I love Daryl.
He did a great job, but I know where you're going with this. So finish the point, because I have a good answer for it.
So they're playing Game 6, and he is the high priest of analytics, and they have their D League team taking nothing but threes and layups, and I'm watching them with their playoff lives on the line, and it's 1994, and it's Hakeem Olajuwon posting up time after time after time with four guys on the perimeter. Where did the higher analytics go? And we're letting Dwight Howard go and get whatever it is that he can get. What happened to the Rockets mindset there in Game 7?
Game 6. It's interesting because in a vacuum, Dwight was fantastic in that series. I feel like that's as good as he can play, right? I don't think he can play better than that. I don't think you could have asked for more from him in that series than that.
I still think he had. He wasn't the reason they lost. I do believe he still has room to grow as a player, though.
He just finished year 11. What is he going to get better at? He is who he is.
Yeah, but a high school guy who lost.
Come on.
Years. I mean, look at when LeBron suddenly developed a game below the free throw line. How many years was he in?
That was 2012, so it was like year 8. I don't think you can change who you are after year 11.
Year 8 without any injuries, without any back issues, without any, I can't say drama, but
he's always going to be a lousy passer. He's always going to be predictable with the 3 moves he has, and he's never going to be a leader. Like I don't see my thing with that Houston team, and this is something that advanced metrics is never going to be able to measure or cover. You're in that timeout. There's 0.9 seconds left, and you're up 2. The other team has Damian Lillard, who's already hit 5 unbelievable shots that have just broken people's backs and has no fear whatsoever.
Yep.
I'm in that huddle, and the only thing I'm saying for 3 straight minutes is, look, we're not giving up a 3. We're just not.
Right.
Anyone who gives up a 3, I'm fighting you in the locker room after this game. We're fighting.
Right.
It can never happen. So just let's go into this thinking there's no 3s, and whoever gives up a 3 is going to get the crap eaten out of them after this game. They went out and gave up a wide-open 3 to Damian Lillard. The guy was wide open.
From what I understand, Mikhail was saying we can't give up a 3. That's the one thing. But you then have to tell your team how you're not going to give up a 3. And I'm always amazed by this because while this was the most egregious, it happens all the time. I mean, we've seen such august and intelligent basketball players as Jason Kidd do it in pivotal games where they say, okay, we're going to switch everything in order so that nobody gets hung up on a screen. We're going to switch everything. And in those situations, the best thing you can do as an offensive player is to set a really bad screen so that the guy on the ball thinks, you know what, there's no reason to switch because nobody's getting rubbed off. But on the other hand, the guy who's not on the ball is thinking, okay, there's a screen, we're switching it, and you get guys totally confused. I don't know what their plan was, but whether they were going to switch everything, I would assume that they were, because Chandler Parsons, and I had so many people around the league, coaches ask me, coaches and scouts go, what was Chandler thinking, because he got such a late break?
Yeah, what was the split-second delay?
I have to believe that he thought, we're switching, and there's two screens set here, and Patrick Beverley's on that side, so he's just going to go. And all you need is that stop. Now, all that said, look, as wide open as he was, you're elevating from 26 feet. You're maybe 6 feet. You're catching, turning, and shooting. It was still, it was a great shot.
It was a great shot, but let me ask you something.
It was still a great shot.
It was a great shot, but did you think it was going in?
From the second he caught it, yes.
Yes, which is why it could never happen. It could just never ever happen. And I thought Chris Paul was unbelievable in the second half of that Clipper game. Like what he did to Steph Curry. Steph Curry got his points. He worked as hard as he's ever worked in his entire life for 33 points. I guarantee he's never ever in his life will ever work harder. Chris Paul was all over him. Chris Paul, I think, committed, I would say, 42 fouls in the second half.
And that's my great issue. He took a page right out of Patrick Beverley's book in terms of how Beverley plays. The problem is Beverley's in foul trouble half the time.
Yeah, Chris Paul could do it.
I'm not sure he had a foul in the series.
No, Chris Paul the refs were like, hey, Chris Paul, if you want to basically molest Stephen Curry for this whole second half, go right ahead.
It was ridiculous.
And Stephen Curry.
It was literally hand-to-hand combat. I mean, it was like a Kill Bill thing. He was karate chopping him throughout the game. No, it was
by the way, Buke, it was genius. It was really smart because once he realized what he could get away with, he took it right to the edge on every single play. And I don't know if it translated on TV, but I thought Curry's big mistake was not doing like the angry slap that Bird used to do on Dennis Rodman. Like he actually should have just gotten a technical foul to try to put the red flag. And I thought Jackson was asleep on it. Like you can't let somebody do that to your best guy. Like at some point somebody's got to stick up for somebody, and they never did. And Chris Paul, I just thought that changed that series when he started doing that.
The problem is that the one time that Steph decided to go off was the game where they got boat raced. And they were down by 30. That's when he threw the mouth guard. That's when he got, he's attacking the rim and he got really upset. And the problem is that it wasn't going to have any effect on that game. And it may have had a little bit of an effect in Game 6, but certainly not enough. This is the problem that I have with the league right now. And it's my biggest one, Bill, is that the players that play it straight up, Steph, I don't know if we can count Derrick Rose. We haven't seen him that much. Derrick Rose is another guy who does not complain to the referees on a regular basis.
Yep.
Those are the guys who are not being respected by the officials. It's only if you whine and cry about every single thing do you get those kind of calls. And to me, Chris Paul, the most outrageous thing is he's doing all that at the defensive end, and yet if they call him for anything, now he's outraged that they would ever blow the whistle. And to me, he's too good. He diminishes his star by that. And there are people that don't like him largely because of that very thing.
Well, what's going to be fascinating, and I think the number one most interesting subplot of this Clippers-Thunder series, is if he tries to do the same stuff with Westbrook. Because Westbrook's they will fight if that happens, I think.
Well, not only that, but he's not going to be able to slow down Russ. And that's why when I see people that have Clippers as the decided favorite in this series, you're discounting that Russ owned and has owned Chris Paul in those one-on-one matchups.
Yeah, Chris all season has had trouble with Westbrook and Eric Bledsoe specifically this season from an athleticism standpoint, and Dragic too. Anybody who's like a force of nature type athletic guard, he's really struggled with because it's really hard for him to get to that level. I think he's really banged up.
So when you do that, when you take Chris out, now the interesting thing is that it really diminished. Doc has diminished how much Paul handles the ball, and they run the offense through a lot of other guys. They run the offense through Redick. They'll let Blake initiate a lot more. By the way, how are you and Doc doing? Have you patched it up? I mean, when you were talking so glowingly about him earlier, I was like, huh.
Yeah, Doc and I are totally cool.
Wait,
it up.
Don't say that like it's a matter of fact.
Wait, I talked about it.
You guys were dogging each other so hard that I had to step up and tweet out to the people following me to say, hey, look, it diminishes. You guys, talk about guys complaining too much. The fact that you guys were going at each other and that I respect both of you, I thought made you both look not so good.
But I didn't start it though. I didn't do anything. Like he was saying that.
Oh, wait.
But Bucher was right.
When he was with, you weren't convinced before Boston.
Oh, I'm not talking about back then. I'm talking about right. He was mad at me for the stuff I said that I said he abandoned Boston, and then he came out 6 months later and admitted that he abandoned Boston. I mean, I think he was in denial about how he handled the whole thing, but the bottom line is he skipped out on the Celtics, and I think he finally admitted that like 6 months later. He forced a trade to the Clippers. They didn't want to trade him.
So he came around to your point of view, and that's why everything's been resolved.
No, we resolved it before then because Wilbon was really upset about it. So that's what we ended up. We had a really good conversation on the phone. He said his piece, I said mine, and we handled it. It was cool. It only lasted a couple days. I agree with you though. I don't like that stuff. I don't want to be involved in that stuff. But when you force a trade to another team, that means you abandon your team, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, he did
fundamentally.
He did the same thing that Pat Riley did, leaving New York, going to Miami.
Yeah, and Pat Riley took a ton of crap for it. Ton of crap.
I don't know about that.
He did. He took a ton of crap for it.
The problem was that he signed a contract with Miami before he was officially, I think, had left New York.
Yeah, and Doc was negotiating with the Clippers before the trade happened. I mean, it wasn't any different. I think I will say this though. The Clippers gave up a 2015 unprotected pick for Doc. That's one of the great trades in recent NBA history because what Doc did for that team over the last 9 days was kind of an unprecedented coaching responsibility. Not just what he did during the games, but everything he did for the organization. And I have some friends who work for the Clippers, and they had nobody. I mean, they had no leader. They had no boss. There was nobody in charge, and it was like that. I don't think people realize Doc wasn't just coaching the team for Game 5. He was actually greenlighting every single big and small decision that they made for that day. Like, what do we, what do we do with the advertising banners? Well, let's ask Doc. Like, those are the kind of decisions he was making. And I don't think any coach has ever had, like, you'd have to go back to the days of Red Auerbach, when Red Auerbach was in everything. But anyway. That's
the issue for them going forward because this having an appointed CEO and this franchise being in limbo potentially for the next year, because anybody thinks it's going to be resolved quickly.
No way.
I'm not buying it. I think this is going to be, as long as Donald is alive, this is going to be dragged out. That said, what I really am a little mystified by is, or not mystified, but I felt was way too much of a rush, was to be so excited about what Adam did. Because for me, Adam did what he had to do. I mean, you couldn't do anything less than that. And at the same time, like, why have the owners not voted? Why have the owners not definitively said, yes, we unanimously, we 3/4, whatever the vote is. I mean, it's got to be unanimous. You'd be a knucklehead not to vote for it. Why have we not had this vote that says, yes, we are going to do everything in our power to force him out? Why has that not happened yet?
I think they are being very careful in every respect. I think there's a million lawyers involved right now because they're
I get that, Bill, but when you come out and everybody gets so like, this is the greatest thing ever, and this changes the race relations in sports, and all of the platitudes, and how everybody is excited by what Adam said. The fact is, Adam made a promise that he can't unilaterally cheat, and technically, absolutely nothing has changed other than you don't have the slumped Donald sitting courtside. That's it.
First of all, he prevented Sterling from being at any of these playoff games, which was the number one problem that they had to deal with. Like over everything else, they had to make sure that he wasn't at a game. And then second, it's the internet, and people overreact either good or bad to anything. So if something happens, it's the greatest thing ever. If something bad happens, it's the worst thing ever. Third, I really think a lot of the reason people appreciated it was the contrast between how he handled it and how Stern would have handled it. Stern would have turned it into a Broadway performance. And Adam just came out. He said what he was going to do. He took questions. He spent one sentence answering each question in the coldest, most efficient way he possibly could. He didn't do any of the bullshit that Stern would have done. I mean, let's be honest. Stern would have turned it into an Oscar-winning performance, that entire press conference. And I think the way people reacted to Adam was he was genuine about it, and he wasn't trying to put himself over. Whereas Stern would have been using it as an opportunity to extend his legacy and his influence and his authority. And I really think that was the difference. Do you agree or not?
That's the difference just in their personalities. Adam doesn't have that in him if he wanted to be, if he wanted to do it this way. It's just not the way. He's more of a consensus builder and just more of a mensch than David is. I give you that. The guys that I really thought swung and missed and looked weak as a result were the players, because the players have always been at a extreme disadvantage, and this was as much an insult to them as anything. And if I'm in their shoes, I wouldn't have this brotherhood and embracing Adam. Look, Adam is still the guy who ate your lunch just a couple of years ago in the collective bargaining agreement, and is looking to eat your lunch again a couple of years from now. So this idea that he's suddenly your friend and we're all in this together, slow your roll on that. And if I'm the players, the very least that I do is I say, you know what, we respect what Adam did, but before we play again, we need the owners to take that vote, and we need to know that they are going to pledge to leave no resource, use every resource and go to every expense to make sure that Donald is gone. Because as you said, there are going to be a million lawyers involved in this. It's going to be a tricky logistical and legal landscape. And if I'm a player, I can't just have Adam saying, this is what I pledged to do. I need the owners saying, you know what, we know it's going to be tricky. We know it could be expensive. We know it's going to be long. We know that we may be hurting our own vested interest in going after Donald, but this is serious enough for us to make that pledge. And that didn't happen. So really all you had was Adam making a great statement and the players going, that's great. Thank you. We're all in. Cool.
Yeah, but so off of that, I mean, first of all, it's an embarrassment that the players union 2+ years after the lockout ended has still not figured out their leadership issues, which were just horrendous during the lockout. Hunter turned out to be, I don't even know what the right word is for him. Fisher, that whole thing, who the hell knows what was going on with him? But like, I do think Adam deserves some blame, even if this isn't totally fair, for not pushing them to have somebody in there that he could deal with. It almost seemed like the league and the owners are kind of happy that the players union is rudderless, right?
Doubt.
It's better for them.
No doubt.
And then secondly, I do feel like in this day and age in 2014, these guys are all thinking of their brands first over the greater good, you know, and even like something like, should we boycott and things like that? That should be instinctive. I'm not even sure like throwing the warm-up jackets in the midcourt, the more I think about it, went nearly far enough. Like, big deal. You turn your jackets around. Like, they had a chance to really come out and say something. I get it. They had 1 million people coming at them. It was 24 hours after the whole thing happened. They have to play a game. They're distracted. They're being pulled in 90 directions, and that was like the compromised decision. But man, it just seemed like the way it was handled was very 2014, right?
Well,
like nothing really happened.
Yep. No, agreed. I mean, and the thing is that you had at the center of it, you had the president of the Players Union in Chris Paul, and you had one of the executive board members in Steph Curry with the Warriors. They were at the heart of this. And don't you think if you were going to, and look, I didn't want to see them miss games. I didn't want to see them boycott and actually miss games, but I wanted them to use that leverage at the hottest time of the year. Do you think that the owners and you have public sentiment on your side? If the players had said, hey, we want the owners to guarantee, we want them to vote right now, and we want them to guarantee that they are going to go after Donald Sterling with everything that they have, that the owners wouldn't have been forced to acquiesce? Well,
and also, the more I look at it and think about it, I really think they should have postponed Game 5 and just moved it back 2 days. And I know that was their worst case scenario and their worst fear and all that stuff, but you can't deny that Games 5 and Game 6 and Game 4, obviously, there's no question that game was just a throwaway game. The Clippers mailed it in. I mean, they weren't, their heads just weren't there. Game 5 is usually the best game of the series. That's the game when everybody's figured each other out and you're just playing at a whole other level, and just that's usually when it goes up a notch. And I don't know, Game 5 and Game 6, they were dramatic, but they weren't well played. I didn't feel like we got the best out of both teams. I think taking a couple days to really take a step back and regroup and all that stuff wouldn't have been a bad idea. The reason I thought of this was Game 7 was so good. And it was it was everything I thought that series was going to be, and it never got there because the Sterling thing came in mid-series and just derailed it. But, man, Game 7, that's the series we probably should have had from Game 4 on, and we never got there. But, go ahead.
I think part of that is because of the makeup of these two teams. I don't see either one of these teams as being incredibly tough mentally. I think they're both. DeAndre Jordan is incredibly an emotional guy. Blake Griffin is an emotional guy. Steph Curry, an emotional. There's too many. They're like the Celtics team that won the championship. They have a lot of feelers, as they say in the brain typing business. And so I believe that the circumstances surrounding Sterling only compounded. You had two other teams in this circumstance. I don't know if it would have had as much of an impact on the level of play in those games immediately afterward.
That's an interesting point, because I was thinking for this Clippers-Thunder series next round, I think Blake is really easy to agitate. I think Chris is easy to agitate. And DeAndre definitely has huge emotional swings. And this Thunder team, which has its own set of issues, but you can't deny that their two best players are tough guys. They have the Perkins and Steven Adams and Collison. Like, these guys are annoying. They're frustrating guys to play against. Butler, they're chippy. Oh, God. Steven Adams. Hey, I saw some list. He's gotten 5 or 6 guys thrown out this season. He's like a hockey player. But I think they're going to spend the whole series agitating them. We still haven't talked about Golden State yet. Mark Jackson dressed in black for that game, which I don't think was a coincidence.
No. Yeah.
You've been around this team all year. You've been working. You live in the Bay Area. You have a local radio show in Drive Time in San Francisco. You've been doing sideline for the games. Is it home or road? Is it for all the games or just the home games?
I did just home games last year. I did home and basically West Coast games on the road this year.
So I would say you have a very good feel for this team. This was the most dysfunctional team of the year, and the team that produced more weird stories that you never knew were true or not true. And the owner and the coach could not have been a worse relationship, and you're watching this unfold during the season. When did you start to think there was a serious problem here?
Well, I never thought there was a serious problem as far as the team was concerned, which I found extraordinary. But being around it and being around the players, I knew that, amazingly enough, that the locker room was insulated from all of the outside stuff. Now, I knew from the very beginning that when you have an owner who is huddling, I guess the alarm point was when Andre Iguodala at the very beginning of the year tweaked his hamstring down in L.A., and the athletic trainer, John Wang had to come out of the locker room immediately after the game and was explaining to Joe Lacob exactly what happened with the hamstring and where the severity was. And I was thinking, this is like right after the game. And that was how involved Lacob was on every front. I mean, he would be talking to Jarrett Jack last season right before tip-off, having a conversation with Jarrett during introductions underneath the basket on the floor. I would see him huddled with Bob Myers and Mark 30 minutes before tip-off. I mean, he was omnipresent, involved in every single thing this team did. And I'm all for owners that have a passion for their team. But it's with anything, Bill. I mean, I'm sure that you're not in every single person's business when it comes to Grantland.
No. Well, what's interesting
is allow people to breathe.
What you just described, though, sounds a little bit like Mark Cuban.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the difference is, it seems like there's just a lot of chefs in that Golden State kitchen, and then there's just too many. Like when it passes the point of like 30 stories where you hear this guy was killing Mark Jackson or this guy, right. Like it's just. Right. I mean, everybody who's around the league knows what was going on, and I don't. Jackson played frustrating lineups. Like they lost some weird home games. Like there's no question. It wasn't like he was the coach of the year. But at the same time, the fact that his players were really believed in him, right. I thought it was just a bizarre situation to watch from afar. And then all of a sudden Scalabrine goes. Then you have the weird Darren Erman gets fired. They won't say why. And this is all stuff happening after the All-Star break before the playoffs even start.
Two things happened within a week of each other.
Right. So that's when it officially got crazy, right?
Yes. Yes, but there was that. I mean, look, the craziness of Joe being involved in everything. And I wanted to address the crazy lineups. The one thing that Mark had was he had a great understanding of the mindset of his players and the emotional and physical capacity of his players. And as I watched the lineups and the guys that he put out on the floor, it had a lot to do with who worked with whom and the pecking order and the mentality that you would have, that you needed at any given time. And so from the outside, it may have looked odd, but the fact of the matter is he was really trying to play with how, like, he learned early on, they tried to have Harrison as the mainstay of the second unit. And for all that Barnes did in the starting lineup and as a stretch four in the postseason, the fact of the matter is he was very comfortable in the slot as the fourth option with the starting lineup. When you made him the centerpiece, he wasn't ready to carry that. His game wasn't, and mentally he wasn't ready to carry that. Well, the problem is, who else are you going to go to in that second unit that's going to carry it? Now, could you move David Lee and have him as coming off the bench? Well, I don't know. I'm not sure how Lacob would have looked at that because of where David Lee is in the list of favorites with the ownership. So I feel as if a lot of people had questions about what Mark was doing, and maybe from the outside it looked odd, but knowing the personalities and the capabilities of the players on that roster, I can just tell you, being up close, the things that he did made a lot of sense to me. Maybe not purely from X and O's, but from the way those guys viewed themselves and what their capabilities were, it made sense to me.
That's interesting because I respect your hoops opinion. The one obvious move that I just thought he missed the whole year was I would have brought David Lee off the bench. I like their small ball lineup. I like when they had 4 shooters out there, and also I was worried about Barnes after the Iguodala trade, and even said as much when Jalen and I did our Golden State preview. I just felt like he's one of those guys that he either needs to be heavily involved or he's not going to help you. And we saw that. I don't think he can play off the bench. And his destiny might be that he should just be on a bad team playing 42 minutes a game and taking 20 shots. That might just be the kind of player he is. I don't know. But that Iguodala trade, I think that was a big reason for all the problems they had. Because, first of all, they went all in on that trade. They gave up 2 unprotected picks. They gave up 2 giant expiring contracts. So they gave away basically every trade asset they had. They get Iguodala, and it also ruins Harrison Barnes.
Right.
I'm going to say that trade was a failure.
They signed him to a 4-year, $48 million deal.
Right.
So you're all in. Not only did you give up the 2 first-round picks and 2 seconds and the expiring contracts, but you signed him up at a point where, is he going to get better? Can you expect what's the production that you can expect from him over the next 4 years? It's more likely to tail off than it is to improve. I agree with you 100%, and that's why, if they're really honest about where this season went, you made a deal and you went all in on a guy who did not deliver, because he was supposed to upgrade you from what Jarrett Jack and Carl Landry gave you.
Yeah.
He was supposed to be the guy who would handle the ball and allow you to take Steph off it for the better part, if not during the season, but at crunch time, at crucial times, to be able to do that. He was supposed to be the guy who could take his guy off the dribble, and now when the defense collapsed, now you're finding either Steph or Clay on the perimeter, and you're having them shoot. I was shocked. Didn't happen.
I was shocked in the Clippers series. Like, they were putting their worst defensive players on him. And there were times when, this is a guy who used to kill. I sound like an ESPN guy. This is a guy. He's someone that used to kill the Celtics. And, we had a lot of trouble guarding him in his peak, because by default, he was their number one scorer. And, you're not going to go that far if he's your number one scorer, but he at least knew how to get himself shots and stuff. And in this series, he's being guarded by J.J. Redick and Jamal Crawford, and they're concentrating so heavily on Curry and Thompson and just making sure those guys don't get open. And he really could have gone off, and it wasn't in him. And on top of that, just the damage that trade did to Harrison Barnes, I almost feel like they just would have been better off not doing anything, waiting till February. But I think that's that new owner mentality, right? You want a champion right away. You want a contender right away. And it's like, I don't know if they needed to do all that stuff right away.
Well, they've demonstrated this mindset from the very beginning.
Bogut.
But go before that. They amnestied Charlie Bell in order to take a run at first Tyson Chandler, who I could have told
and then
them
DeAndre
was never coming to the Bay Area.
Yep.
And then DeAndre Jordan, who was a restricted free agent. And the value of that amnesty, you're going to do it on a $4 million guy. You couldn't wait to spend it on a guy who had a $4 million contract just to take a run to get you couldn't wait to get your big guy.
Right.
And so there's that I think the bottom line for me is you make a deal like Iguodala, and that doesn't improve you. And yet you did improve all these questions about Mark Jackson and what he's doing with your team, and you don't acknowledge that you made a deal that set you back right from the start. If you're not accounting for that, if you're not acknowledging that, then to me you're not being fair on where this team really was. Because look, and not only was Iguodala not what you said he was going to be offensively, but he wasn't what Klay Thompson was the best perimeter defender on this team. Iguodala could not stay with J.J. Redick for a better part of that series.
It's interesting. They had somebody wrote an article. Somebody wrote an article about the Iguodala plus minus and how devastating he is with the advanced metrics. And it was like in March or something. It was almost like the front office had asked somebody to write it. Yeah. And I'm thinking like, man, when I watch these games, I kind of wonder why they made the trade. You know, I think they thought they were getting Andre Iguodala from 2010, and he's clearly not quite the same guy anymore.
Well, Bill, the other thing that analytics do not account for is, and I thought in Game 7 in particular, he led them with 5 turnovers. They only had 18 as a team, but he had 5 turnovers. But it wasn't just that it was 5; it was the kind of turnovers. They were
totally agree.
Oh, I mean, there are certain turnovers that are just back-breaking and bone-crushing, either because of the timing or because you have a fast break and you can't finish it and you throw it up in the air. Those were the kind of turnovers that he had throughout the series that I'm saying, this is supposed to be one of your veterans. This is one of the guys that's supposed to be your emotional leader. And not only is he not a vocal guy, and he never was, and they really missed that in Jarrett Jack as much as anything. But he's also doing things that if Harrison Barnes does it, or even Draymond Green, you look at it and go, okay, that's a young guy. You look at Andre Iguodala doing it, and you're going, come on, man, you're not supposed to be the guy making those kind of turnovers. Right.
You've been in the league for 8-9 years. And I also think that I don't mean to turn this into a bash Iguodala session because I think he's a very good player. But
I do too.
I also think, you learn a lot about your team and your guys in a Game 7. He was not somebody I feel like was totally like, hey, guys, I got this. They're really shutting down Steph. Let me take over for a couple of plays. Was not in him. And I got to be honest. I'm not saying it's not in him at some point. I didn't feel like Klay Thompson was really like, hey, guys, we're not losing this game. He seemed very comfortable kind of floating in and out of it.
I would agree that Klay came out with a purpose and hit a couple of big threes early.
Yes.
Was aggressive early. I believe that Klay can be that guy, but you have to put it on him. And I think he's trying to find his way playing next to a guy like Steph. Klay's fearless. Klay's willing to take that on if you give it to him. But I feel as if if you want to critique anything that Mark did, to me, it would have been, let me put more on Klay. He did it at the beginning of the game.
Right.
They really didn't go back to it. And I would have tried found a way to do that.
You would have put more on him because he had J.J. Redick and Jamal Crawford guarding him?
Yeah, and look, he did a great job. Well, and he did a great job on post-ups, on forcing double teams. That was more than Iguodala did.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean.
It was a matter of passing out of it.
Just as somebody who wanted the Clippers, I'm sitting in my seat. I'm around all Clipper fans. I want the Clippers to keep winning because if they make the finals, then I get to spend more time in LA and all that stuff. So just mentally, I'm kind of rooting for them, even though I'm just rooting for a good game. And every time Klay Thompson got the ball in a post up, I was scared.
Yeah.
And the Clippers were scared. My thing is, if you're doing anything that causes the other team to go, oh, we have to double team this, then you've probably stumbled onto something, and I didn't feel like they went to him enough.
Agreed. But and it showed one of the flaws with this team. The problem is okay, so you're putting Klay, you're posting him up. The Clippers come in double. They rotate. Who's the only guy that you have to stay with on the perimeter? Really, that scares you. It's Steph, right?
Yeah.
So ideally what you would want is Andre posting up, drawing the double team and kicking out, and now you have Klay and Steph, and now you have real problems. But Draymond exceeded expectations, hit 5 of his first 6 threes, but you're not counting on that.
Right, and the reality is Stephen Curry is not really a point guard. There's
that too.
He's just a guard. He's a guard. But he's not somebody that he's not out there going, I'm going to get this guy. This guy's heating up. I'm going to set him up. He doesn't think that way. He's always going to think about his shot first, and he should. So he's basically a shooting guard who brings the ball up and does some stuff. And then they have Iguodala. Iguodala is the point forward, which we've seen, Grant Hill way back when, Scottie Pippen on the Blazers, and to a lesser extent the Bulls. Like, we've seen people do that in that role. The problem is he's not good enough offensively, I don't think, to run an offense. He can do it. Yeah, he can do it. But when you get to the level of
his handle isn't nearly as tight as it needs to be.
And he's sloppy.
For him to be your primary. Yeah, no, exactly. It's the dribble's too high. He gets into traffic. It's almost guaranteed either a turnover or he's just got to pick it up and pass out of it. No, that's why when they got him and they said, well, he's going to, we're going to be able to put the ball in his hands instead of Jarrett Jack's, and he's going to be able to take people off the dribble, unlike Jarrett, and that's going to get people to collapse, and then we can kick it out to Steph and Clay and our shooters. I was thinking, you know what? I've seen that. I've seen this movie, and it doesn't. That's not the way it plays out. They tried that in Denver. They tried it in Philly. He's not that kind of a guy. Not on a team when you're talking about going to the postseason and making a deep run.
Well, I don't know if the Clippers would have traded Eric Bledsoe to the Warriors, but there were some big chess pieces out there, and you think of like all the stuff the Warriors gave up to get Iguodala. That was a premium.
Everything. They totally invested in him, and I just feel as much as anything, that's what's going to come back and bite them. And again, I don't have anything against Iguodala. I just believe that the price was way too high, and he was not nearly what they advertised him to be. And if you want to look at blame, you want to place blame on why this season ended up not going the way that they wanted it to, you start there. The other thing is as a result of being the sideline guy, I'm in every single huddle. Yeah. And one of the things that was missing is that last year with Jarrett, when the coaches huddle, there's about 30 seconds before they come and they address the team. That 30 seconds is when Jarrett was always the guy. He had the perfect ability to challenge the team or challenge particular guys, but not do it in a way where they got ticked off or they were like, screw you, but to call them out and guys heard it and they would, and they didn't take offense. They didn't have it. They had nobody like that.
I noticed that at Game 7. I was watching it. They didn't have that guy. You're right.
So Mark ended up having to be that guy more often than not, saying, hey, come on, guys. And you can't have the coach in that role.
By the way, Houston didn't have that guy either, as, bringing it back to what we talked about earlier. And what's interesting is Washington has a lot of those guys.
Yeah.
You watch Washington play, and there's 5 or 6 guys talking, and I really feel like that's such a big part of playoff basketball that people just miss. And maybe it's something you can't totally see unless you're at the games. But I noticed that with Indiana, too. It's like it's David West. Who else on that team is who else even has a voice who's going to carry respect? But do you think Jackson comes back or no?
I believe that it's going to depend on whether he allows management to pick his staff. And if they are allowed to pick his staff, how long of a contract will he get? I do believe there's a way to find a middle ground here between what Lacob wants and what Jackson would want. Because while I do believe that Mark operated from a place of paranoia at times, I can't completely fault him for it.
Yeah, I think you could have taken out the word "at times." I mean, I just heard from too many people like it was, down the stretch, especially with whatever that'll happen with Darren Erman. One of the most paranoid atmospheres probably in the history of the NBA with a coach in a front office. I don't think we've seen a more paranoid situation, have we?
I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Not one that I saw as up close as I saw with this one, because I'm just trying to think of an owner that had as many different. I mean, look, the Clippers back in the day had so many different people.
Oh yeah. I mean, the Clippers and the Knicks are disqualified. Those are
exactly.
You almost can't count them.
The Knicks being another one with Larry Brown and Isaiah Thomas. That probably fit the bill too. But no, and look, how much of that was? Well, you know what? I mean, maybe Dan Gilbert and the Cleveland Cavaliers. I mean, the point that I'm making is it all starts with the owner and owners that are now running these teams like it's fantasy league.
Right,
Like,
and think they're real basketball guys, yeah.
Yeah, there was, somebody wrote that just in the last day or two in the San Francisco Chronicle, I think it was Scott Ostler was saying that, Lacob considers himself somewhat of a hoops expert. And that I just stopped right there, and I'm like, that's your problem. That's your problem right there, is that you have an owner who plays pickup at Stanford. And then, look, again, it's like Iguodala. Lacob has done some tremendous things. He's so much better than what they had previously as ownership. I love a guy who wants to win a championship, is willing to put the resources toward it, sees what a gold mine San Francisco can be, and wants to build an arena there. There's a lot to like about Joe Lacob as an owner. But anytime you're getting into, considers himself somewhat of a hoop expert, and he plays pickup at Stanford, and he's made his money in something other than sports, I'm going to look at it and say, yeah, let's slow our roll a little bit on the guy who's a hoops expert and now thinks that he can take issue with what Mark Jackson is doing with his team and with the assistant coaches and where the X's and O's are, because it's, you know what, we would run it a little bit different in our pickup games on Saturday.
I'm actually pro Lacob. I just think he's a new owner. I think new owners, it takes them 5 or 6 years to get it and to realize, like, you know what, the best way I can own a team is to find somebody I trust to pick the players and somebody I trust to coach it, and just be supportive and stay out of their way. And if there's big decisions, you're going to need my rubber stamp. But for the most part, I just need these two guys to run the team. Like, just watch Peter Holt. Watch the way Dr. Buss owned the team in his prime. It's not rocket science. There's a way to own a team. And the new wave of owners, they want to be involved in every single step. I think this is something I like Wick Grossbeck a lot. I think it took him a long time. He's a lot like Lacob. Like, he wanted to get involved in everything and every decision. I think it took him a long time to get to the place where he's like, Doc and Danny are my dudes. I'm trusting them. It took him 5 years.
Look at Mark Cuban and his evolution. He did not win that championship, and I would dare say he would not have won that championship if he hadn't finally acquiesced and conceded to Rick Carlisle and allowed him to run the team.
Yeah.
Without the oversight, because what Carlisle did, and I hope it's funny, all of the analytics people want to say, hey, look, they had Roland Beach on the bench the year they won the championship. Yeah. He defied analytics when he decided to start J.J. Barea over Deshaun Stevenson and moved Peja Stojakovic out of the rotation and went with the janitor. He went against all that, and he went by gut, by simply saying, you know what, we need to play faster in order to make the Heat pay. That wasn't analytics. That was just coaching acumen, and that was how Mark ended up with a championship. It's finally he let go. He stopped railing on the referees. He stopped being in on how he thought the team should be run, and he ended up with a ring. And I agree with you. I believe that Lacob is probably to some extent going to have to go through the same process. But, I also get it, because these guys are spending more than they ever have before to get the team. And if you own the team, wouldn't you want to have the fun of running the team? I mean, I get the appeal of it. It's just
there's one other part too, though.
Take responsibility for it too.
There's one other part. Like, you have a lot of people in your life when you're the owner. They're kissing your ass. You got family, you got friends, all these people. If they see like that you don't like you're thinking about a trade or you don't like your coach or whatever, they're going to cater their conversations towards that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're just going to be talking about it all the time. And they, like, hey, he's not getting along with Mark Jackson. Hey, what was up with Klay Thompson leaving him in with 4 fouls? And then Lakers like, I don't know what he was doing on that one. And then then it's like, hey, I talked to the owner and he was killing the coach. And you get that whole thing. But here's my theory on this. I'm throwing a theory at you on this. This is my theory on the whole Mark Jackson, Joe Lacob thing. I think it starts out, it's great. Mark Jackson's getting a lot of attention and credit because nobody is more connected to more media people than Mark Jackson, right? Yep. He worked with Van Gundy and Breen. Reggie Miller's his best friend.
Other than your boy Daryl Morey.
Right. He worked with Reggie Miller's his buddy. He's buddies with Wilbon. He's played with Jalen. Like, you just go down the line. He's more connected with more people than probably even Doc Rivers. So they're
Gundy.
just, and Van Gundy and Breen, So, and Mike Tirico. Like, it just, the list goes on and on. Everyone at ESPN. Everybody loves Mark Jackson. I love Mark Jackson. I did a game with him. He's the greatest guy ever. So you come out of the gate, they do okay. Everybody goes nuts. Mark Jackson, Mark Jackson, Mark Jackson. And Lacob's sitting there going, well, wait a second. This team is a mess. I just spent $455 million on this team or whatever I spent. What about me? Wait, didn't I do a good job? So so it's stuck in his craw. Then the thing happens with Jackson and the stripper. The team's embarrassed. So now they're like, well, what's up with this guy? He's Mr. Religious. And then the stripper thing happens. So they cover that. They help him, make that go away. And then now it's kind of it's a little more suspicious. Keeps going. Goes to the playoffs last year. Lacob's bar mitzvah, basically. He's in the playoffs. They win a series. They're going against the Spurs. They're up 2-1. It's great. And it's just Mark Jackson, Stephen Curry, Mark Jackson, and that's the narrative, the whole playoffs. Now he goes into that offseason, and he's like, well, this guy, we blew that Spurs series. He's not that good of a coach. Why is he getting all the attention? I'm going to make the Iguodala trade, and we're going to make the finals this year, and this guy's going to make the finals for me. And then the season doesn't go that well. All the sniping starts. Jerry West is in there. I mean, who's a bigger second guesser than Jerry West? I mean, he's one of the most unhappy guys in sports. And I think it just compounds and compounds and compounds. Jackson starts hearing stuff. His media people come in. They start defending him. And it just gets worse and worse. But I'm not sure anything actually happened.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Well, no. It's a great theory, and I have no doubt that is a big part of it. I would also say that another element here, and it's the rub between the new owners and the guys whose forte is the fact that they played in the league and they understand the game on a nuanced level and the team chemistry level of the game, because that's really hard to translate to an owner. And their eyes sort of glaze over when you want to get to that. It's not something that they can measure and they can really get their arms around. And that's where Jackson's strength is. And to his detriment, and I think this is also the New Yorker in him, he's not going to run from the fight. So the fact that he plays up, hey, you know what? This is a spiritual thing. There's a spiritual connection between me and my players. And if you're not on board with that, well, then you just don't get it. Well, that's got to rub Lacob the wrong way, too, because he's thinking, okay, wait a minute. I get the whole technical aspect of this. I get and they look at analytics and you're telling me basically I don't understand the magic of what you're doing. For a guy who considers him somewhat of a hoop expert, that's really insulting. And oh, by the way, I'm your owner, and you're a first-year coach, and I gave you your first shot. It says it has to be as insulting to Lacob that Mark might be taking the position that he's taking as it was to Jackson that you would have Scalabrine first time as an assistant coach who says, I'm not going to talk to you for 5 weeks because I don't think you do it the right way.
Scalabrine said that, or Jackson said that?
Scalabrine, essentially, that was Scalabrine's position with Mark.
Oh, that's not good.
You don't do it the way me that I think it should be you should be done. I mean, I have to laugh as I tell it because it's just comical to me that a guy who's his first year as an assistant coach, he's the third or fourth assistant on the team, and he of all people is going to take the stand that, yeah, you know what, you're really not following my principles that I believe in as a coach. But that's exactly that was the heart of it, and Mark was astonished that somebody would take that position. Well, in a way, and this isn't definitive, but Mark has really played up that it's about, and then he underscored it. Hey, what do you guys think about going back to when he said, hey, you guys you act like you're used to this. You look at our team, and then he doubled down during the playoffs. Hey, I'm going up against the Hall of Fame coach and 2 of the top 10 players. He was basically saying, I'm undermanned. Well, you're going directly at what Lacob touted through Bob Myers saying, hey, we've given him everything he's needed.
Yeah,
Mark
we're a title contender.
Mark in a way is saying, no, you're not.
Well, and also, you do the Bogut, you basically, Bogut is such a big piece of this whole thing, and Bogut can't stay in the court.
Right.
You know, I'm sorry. I don't think you can use, we didn't have Andrew Bogut for the playoffs as an excuse. There's a 60% chance you're not going to have Andrew Bogut for any playoffs. Like, that's who you traded for. Some guys are durable and some aren't.
You touted this team as one that could go to the Western Conference Finals. That's where the bar was set by Joe Lacob last year. Does that, with you take Andrew Bogut out of the equation, aren't they essentially the same team that was a pleasant surprise to get to the second round last year?
Yeah. It seems like they should get divorced. But what do I know? I'm a child of divorce. Just seems like a bad situation. I can't imagine that 6 months from now, the Warriors or 9 months from now, the Warriors are going to be like 30-8, and Joe Lacob and Mark Jackson are going to have their arms around each other going, oh man, remember last year when we hated each other?
Well,
thank God we worked it out. I just don't see that happening.
I hear that, but it's also a matter of what are your alternatives, and can your lack of solid alternatives prompt you to get together and say, hey, look, we're going to take the divorce analogy. Okay, look, really, you know what? We're not into sleeping with each other anymore, but we have these great kids and we want to raise them the right way. Let's stay together to make that happen. Don't you think it's conceivable that if it's not too fractured, that you could find a way to make it work for the best of the group that you've put together? Considering that everything, all told, you made it work this year?
I think it's conceivable. And I think Jackson played the whole thing brilliantly from the moment the Scalabrine happened. He turned it into an us against them situation. He couldn't have played it better. He made, it's almost like, to keep the divorce analogy going, it's like the mom whose dad moves out because he's having an affair and the mom's working the kids. I wanted to stay married. It's your dad. It's his fault. And the kids gravitate toward the mom. I think it was just really smart. And those guys, here's my thing. I don't think you can fire him because those guys fought for him in Game 7. I was there. I was at the game. Those guys fought for him the whole time. There was 2 different moments during that game when a lesser team would have caved because the Clippers got going, the crowd got into it, and they kept fighting back. They were right there. They made the Clips go to a level that I don't even think the Clips knew they had in them. And they lost by 4. That guy should come back. Listen, I've been a little critical of him this season. I've also defended him. Like I'm not one of those. I like him a lot personally, but I would say if I thought he should be fired. From what I saw in Game 7, I don't know how you fire that guy. I really don't.
I agree. Whatever criticisms anybody might have, and look, the other thing I take into account is it's his 3rd year as a head coach.
Yeah,
he's still figuring things out. He's not perfect, nor should he be at this point as a head coach.
Well, and Doc Rivers took a while. I think Doc Rivers is a really good example of that. I was there for all the Doc Rivers. I was writing columns killing him. Doc Rivers did not do a good job until Kevin Garnett showed up. And eventually he learned how to be a great coach.
The one question that I have, and seeing this up close, is that one of the things that Mark has utilized, and it's really where you have to have that thing that you're barring the door against. And Mark has had that. He's always been able to create that boogeyman, that thing that can he coach a team? Can he get them all to buy in without having to create that the villain that unites you? I don't know how many times you can go to that well, or that you can create that. And it's why, and I'm aware of this, spending a little more time in the Bay Area now. Jim Harbaugh does the same thing with the 49ers.
Yes.
And has had great success developing the team as a result. But you notice he never stays one place too long. It's 3 years, 4 years. USD, he gets it done. Stanford gets it done. 49ers, now they're talking trading into Cleveland. How much longer does he have? I don't know if that approach is a long-term approach. The difference for me is that Mark is so early in his coaching career. Can he find another way to do it, or is that the only card he has to play?
Well, and then last thing, and then we have to go. The other thing that he achieved was that he made it very scary for any other coach to want to even go into that situation. So
also true.
Let's say he gets fired. If I'm a coach with an IQ over 95, I do not want to follow Mark Jackson as the next coach of that team when everybody loved him and didn't want him to get fired. It's like, hey guys, here I am. I'm your new coach. I know you love the other guy, but let's try to make this work. Yeah, okay, That's going to work. Good luck.
No, that's a huge challenge. The one offset that I would say is that this is such an enticing situation with being in the Bay Area, with the new arena going up in San Francisco, with guys like Steph and Clay. Because for me, Steph, if you really want to take the next step as a franchise player, I don't put him in the superstar category, but to me, he is a franchise player. Is that he has the ability to say, if anybody asks me, I want Mark as my coach, but I want Mark as my coach, or I got to rethink about my commitment to this franchise.
Boom.
Or he says, I like Mark, I hope he's back, but you know what? I'm I'm going to get it done one way or the other. I don't care how he goes. He can't take if you ask me. No. You're the franchise player. You take your position. It takes a little bit of guts. He's going to have to put himself out on the line. It's not how we think of Steph Curry, but if he truly wants to be the leader of this team, then that's the kind of stand and the kind of risk he's going to have to take. That I'm going to make this work. Either you have to give me Mark so I can make this work, or you know what? I like Mark. I hope he's here, but I'm going to make this work regardless.
You left out one part. Hey, by the way, I'm the cheapest superstar in the league. I make $11 million a year, and I should be making 16. If it's okay with you guys, I'd like to have the same coach, or I'm out of here in 2 years. Does that sound cool, everybody?
Yeah, the most amazing thing is that of all the things that we talked about with the Warriors this year, not once did we talk about Steph Curry's ankle.
No.
Not once.
Yeah, he's been, 2 years now?
No, last year there were still issues during the playoffs. He had some issues. He was dinged up. But this year, last year it was every time he drove to the hoop, and now it's you have to throw yourself anytime you drive to the hoop. You have to throw yourself.
Yeah.
It's standard procedure. It's what I hate about the league right now. But no, that was he was right in the same category with Andrew Bogut. He's taken himself out of that category.
Good point. All right, we'll talk to you later in the playoffs. We're running out of time. I have a lot of other stuff to talk to you about, but we'll get there at some point. It's good to have you back. Read you on Bleacher Report. Check you out. Where else? On the your radio show is a podcast, right?
Radio show has a podcast, and maybe doing. I think I'm supposed to do. I don't know. While we were doing this, my agent was calling me. I don't know if that means that I'm doing more stuff for TNT or not, but you may see me there as well.
Oh, good. I like your sideline stuff. A pleasure. Talk to you soon. Ric Bucher, thank you.
You got it, Bill.
Before we go, I wanted to mention Stamps.com, sponsor of the BS Report. Go to Stamps.com. put in a little BS on the top right of the site, and you get a deal on a whole bunch of stuff, a scale, postage, a bunch of things that you'll like. And more importantly, you can turn your office into its own personal post office. You don't have to wait in line. You don't have to stand in line behind all those annoying people. You can just get it done. Just buy your own postage. Print out your own stuff. Stamps.com. Check it out. We'll be back on the BS Report later this week.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Podcenter at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.